The tension in the air at the World Economic Forum in Davos was palpable, a physical manifestation of the fraying relationship between two historic allies. It wasn't just diplomatic friction, it was a collision of worldviews. On one side, a returning U.S. president, emboldened and transactional, declaring that Canada lives because of the United States and should show more gratitude for the freebies it supposedly receives. On the other, Canadian officials like Mark Carney, standing firm on national identity, asserting that Canada thrives not because of American benevolence, but because of its own inherent strength. Then came the chilling warning from the American leadership: in a trade war, Canada might not survive. The implication was clear. The northern neighbor is a dependent satellite, existing solely under the protective umbrella of American power. But this narrative, broadcast to the world from the Swiss Alps, is a dangerous delusion. While Washington fixates on tariffs, military budgets, and the optics of strength, it is blinding itself to a terrifying geographic reality. The common belief is that America holds the shield. The truth is, Canada holds the sword, and its blade is resting gently against America's carotid artery. Today, we are stripping away the political rhetoric and ignoring the lopsided military statistics. Yes, the United States has a population 10 times larger, an economy that dwarfs Canada's, and a military budget 15 times the size. But geography operates on a different logic entirely. It is indifferent to aircraft carriers and stock market indices. The inescapable truth is that Canada possesses three distinct geographic kill switches stretching from the Great Lakes to the high Arctic. These natural advantages give it the power to bring the United States to its knees without ever firing a single bullet. Most Canadians are blissfully unaware of this latent power. They see themselves as the friendly, polite neighbor, the smaller brother in the North American dynamic. Yet, by the end of this analysis, it will become abundantly clear why the world's sole superpower is, in reality, a hostage to its quiet northern partner. We are about to look at a map of North America, not through the lens of friendship, but through the cold, hard lens of strategic vulnerability. Let's begin with the most fundamental element of life: water. Canada is the Saudi Arabia of fresh water, controlling roughly 20% of the world's total surface supply, more than any other nation on Earth. This statistic alone should send shivers down the spines of American strategic planners. Why? Because the Great Lakes system, the beating heart of North America's water supply, is inextricably linked to Canadian territory. This system provides drinking water to nearly 40 million Americans. Picture the geography: Lake Superior, Lake Huron, Lake Erie, and significant portions of Lake Ontario all straddle the border. Crucial arteries like the Niagara River and the Detroit River, which connect these massive bodies of water, define the boundary itself. Furthermore, the entire system drains into the Atlantic Ocean via the St. Lawrence Seaway, which flows directly through the Canadian province of Quebec. This isn't just about drinking water, it's about industrial survival. The Great Lakes are a dual-use asset. The water powers massive hydroelectric plants that supply electricity to millions of American homes and businesses in the Rust Belt and beyond. It is also the primary shipping highway for the raw materials of American industry, carrying iron ore from the mines of Minnesota to the steel mills of Pennsylvania and Indiana. If Canada ever decided to turn off the tap, to weaponize the flow of this water through dams, diversions, or regulatory blockades, the consequences would be catastrophic. It could paralyze American steel production, trigger widespread blackouts in major cities, and ignite the most severe water crisis in U.S. history. And here is the most terrifying part for the Pentagon: there is no military solution. You cannot invade a 5,500-mile border, much of it running through dense, unforgiving wilderness that makes other theaters of war look like a training ground. The American industrial heartland is entirely dependent on a resource it cannot control and cannot conquer. The vulnerability deepens when we look at energy. Today, Canada is the silent partner powering the American grid, supplying roughly 20% of the total electricity imported by the United States. To put that in perspective, it's enough energy to power the entire state of California. This electricity generation comes primarily from massive hydroelectric dams in Quebec, Manitoba, and British Columbia. Clean, reliable baseload power that flows south through a limited number of high-voltage transmission lines. Geography has created natural choke points. A few strategically flipped switches in Canada could plunge the entire northeastern U.S., including financial hubs like New York City, into darkness. But the true Achilles heel is oil. Canada is not just a supplier, it is America's largest foreign source of oil, providing around 4 million barrels per day. This crude flows from the oil sands of Alberta through a vast network of pipelines directly to refineries in the American Midwest and Gulf Coast. A massive proportion of this volume travels through a single system, the Enbridge Mainline. Think about that for a moment. A single, Canadian-controlled infrastructure system is the jugular vein for American refineries in Illinois, Oklahoma, and Texas. If Canada were to shut down the Enbridge pipeline for any reason, political leverage, environmental concerns, or national security, U.S. gasoline prices would skyrocket overnight. Refineries would shutter, supply chains would seize, and the American economy would grind to a halt. The geography of the Canadian Shield, a massive rock formation covering half the country, acts as a natural funnel, directing all energy infrastructure southward. America has built its energy security on a north-to-south flow it doesn't control. Finally, we arrive at the most dynamic and rapidly evolving geographic advantage, the Arctic. As climate change accelerates the melting of polar ice, a new world map is being drawn. The Arctic Ocean is transforming from an icy barrier into a potential superhighway for global trade. The most coveted route is the Northwest Passage, a sea lane connecting the Atlantic and Pacific that cuts thousands of miles off shipping times between Europe and Asia. Crucially, the primary routes of the Northwest Passage pass through waters that Canada claims as its internal sovereign territory. This gives Ottawa potential control over one of the future's most critical trade arteries. Canada has the power to become the gatekeeper of the Arctic, dictating terms of passage and potentially shutting out adversaries or even allies from the world's most lucrative new shipping lanes. Beyond shipping, the Arctic is a treasure trove of resources. Beneath its seafloor lie an estimated 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and 30% of its natural gas. As the ice retreats, Canada will gain primary access to these vast reserves. But the real prize isn't fossil fuels. It's the building blocks of the future economy. Canada holds immense, largely untapped reserves of critical minerals like lithium, cobalt, nickel, and rare earth elements, the essential ingredients for electric vehicle batteries, solar panels, and advanced defense technologies. As the U.S. attempts to transition to a green energy economy and decouple from China, it finds itself trading one dependency for another. It is becoming entirely reliant on Canadian minerals to power its future. And here again, geography delivers a twist. These resources are located in Canada's remote, inhospitable far north, territory that is virtually impossible to invade or occupy. China has already recognized this, pouring billions into Canadian mining projects to secure access. Canada doesn't need American permission to sell these resources to Beijing. If Washington ever pushes too hard, Canada holds an economic arsenal that could cripple the U.S. green transition before it even begins. So, the next time a politician or pundit claims that America protects Canada, or that the northern neighbor exists only through American benevolence, remember that the map tells a very different story. It's a story of profound, asymmetrical interdependence. Canada controls the tap for America's water, the switch for its electricity, the valve for its oil, the gate for its future trade routes, and the vault for its critical minerals. America's future is, quite literally, in Canada's hands. Perhaps even Canadians themselves haven't fully grasped the magnitude of this power, content to play the role of the quiet, friendly neighbor. But geography is a ruthless truth-teller. In the grand game of global power, military might is temporary, but geography is forever. And in North America, the geography of survival belongs to Canada. If you've always thought of the border as a one-way street of American power, it's time to look at the map again. The reality is far more terrifying than the headlines suggest.